All right, good afternoon, class. We are going to start today by just reviewing briefly about biomes. Again, biomes are an area on Earth's surface that have very similar climate patterns, as well as the animals and plants that live there are also similar. So, a biome is comprised by many similar ecosystems. In the map that we looked at the other day, you could kind of see that there are some bands that kind of go across where you see similar biomes in similar longitudes. And that is due to the tilt of the Earth, as well as also some of these are contributed by ocean currents. We didn't get to talk about this slide very much, but I want to remind you the difference between climate and weather. Weather is a daily kind of measure of the atmospheric conditions over a particular area of Earth. And so it can be temperature, cloud coverage, precipitation, humidity levels, dew point temperature, what that would be, etc. So, but when you get into climate, it's talking about more of an ongoing collection and analysis of data, precipitation and temperature mainly. So this diagram I like because it really makes main biomes in comparison. We see tundra here on the very far side, the lower end of the scale for temperature, whereas you see that subtropical, savanna, tropical forests are all on the higher end of the temperature. When you look at the precipitation, you see that the deserts and the tundra are at the low end, whereas the rainforests are all closer towards the top. So I just like this because it kind of gives you an overview about how the climate is different in these areas, and you can almost guesstimate where these would be located along the longitudinal lines based on that data. So now we're going to start talking more about the science notes part 2 that you have in front of you. And the law of conservation is what I want to focus on because we studied both of these at the beginning of the year. As you remember, basically energy cannot be created or destroyed. So that is even true in an ecosystem, or really just when you think about the biosphere of life. It remains pretty constant. Although energy within a system can change from one form to another, it's always still present. Energy cannot be created or destroyed, but it can be transformed. Pretty much the same as matter. Matter cannot be created or destroyed, but it can be changed. So it might change from a physical state, such as gas, to another one as liquid, solid. But within an ecosystem, the amount of energy is pretty consistent. And you could even talk about that in bio, and then you learn biosphere. So, energy flow within an ecosystem. It has to do with what the organism takes in, how it transforms the energy, and then how it releases the energy. Organisms are classified either as producers or consumers. And keep in mind that, again, all year we've been studying that all of this energy in the ecosystem all really starts with the sun. And that's what we talked about when we talked about wind and ocean currents and the water cycle. And so now we're also just in the ecosystem as well. Certain organisms use the sun's energy to make their own nutrition. These are producers. That would be your plants, your algae, and some protists, as well as bacteria. The process that they use to make their own food is called photosynthesis. And I know that you learned a little bit about this last year, so I just really want to recap on it. Photosynthesis can be represented using a chemical equation, and it's a balanced equation. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how this is a balanced equation. Here it's saying that 6 carbon dioxide molecules and 6 water molecules plus sunlight energy, nothing can happen without energy, makes glucose, which is what this is, C6H12O6, and 6O2, which is a form of oxide gas. And then it also releases heat energy, so energy from heat. So I think this is kind of cool, and this is getting a little bit into high school chemistry, but I think it's important that you understand this. Whenever you're looking at a chemical equation, if there's no number behind an element, it is considered to be 1. And then if there's a number in front of the molecule, you simply multiply that to figure out how much of each atom. So to find out how many carbon are in these carbon dioxide molecules, this group of those molecules, you would say 6 times 1. So we have 6 carbons. We also have 6 oxygen. 6 times 2 would be 12 oxygen. Okay? And then we're adding that on to 12 hydrogen. 6 times 2 is 12. And then we have also 6 times 1 would be 6 oxygen. So we have 12 oxygen and 6, so that actually is equal to 18 oxygen, 12 hydrogen, and 6 carbons. And what's going to happen is you'll see matter is conserved. On this side, we're going to have the same atom, same number of each atom, just maybe configured and bonded differently with other atoms. So again, C6, there's no number out in front, so it's just 1 times 6. So we have 6 carbon. I'm just going to circle this. We have 12 hydrogen. So already these two are balanced on the other side. Now we also have an O6 here, but then we have 12 more on this side. 6 times 2 is 12. Add those together and you have your 18. So now this is balanced. So that just kind of reiterates how the law of conservation of matter really works. You do kind of need to have a good feel about that photosynthesis equation. There's a video, and you are going to have to go in and link to this to answer the questions on your notes through Blackboard. So please go under Science in the STEM Blackboard page. And there's other things you can link to as well, but definitely this video here at the bottom. Go into the STEM Blackboard page, click on Science, go under 4th quarter, and then you'll be able to see it under 4th quarter. All right, so we're going to switch gears and talk about the consumers. Consumers are the living organisms that eat producers or other consumers. They are not able to make their own food. Types of consumers include the following. There's herbivores that eat only plants. A different way of thinking about it, they only eat producers. And here are some insects and cows examples of herbivores. Carnivores eat other animals, so basically they're known to eat meat. That would be examples of those animals: lions, cheetahs, and some insects. Omnivores eat both plants and animals, so they're eating the producers and consumers. And examples of those would be bears, pigs, and chimpanzees. And then lastly, we have decomposers. And decomposers break down dead material and waste in an ecosystem. So these are in the ground, they decompose different dead that used to be living material and kind of recycle that. Examples of those would be mushrooms and bacteria. Now, this is called an energy pyramid. An energy pyramid shows the flow of energy in an ecosystem. So, again, at the bottom here, you can see that the base, the foundation of an ecosystem is are the producers. And on top of that, you have the consumers that are eating the producers. And above them, it just kind of keeps moving up the food chain to larger and larger consumers that eat larger and larger consumers also. what I also think is interesting is how they have the sun drawn in, because if without the sun, you can't have producers growing. So that is the vital part of the energy that has to enter into the ecosystem. The plants use some of that energy to grow and to spread, and then that energy can get carried up the food chain. However, during the plants doing photosynthesis and growing and doing their processes, they are going to lose some heat energy. And that happens through all stages of um, the energy pyramid. And also you'll notice off to the side, decomposers is listed, and that's because as these things die, they are decomposed inside the ground and released back into plants as nutrients. So this is kind of how the energy keeps cycling through. So when we talk about the law of conservation of energy, that is really how it happens. All right, so let's kind of just go back for a second and tie everything back together that we really talked about most of the year. And so if you remember, we talked over and over about how important the sun is in the role of pretty much everything that happens on Earth. When I say pretty much, it's not pretty much, it's everything. And also we've talked about the water cycle, and none of these processes within an ecosystem could take place without water, because water was one of those things that was needed as far as photosynthesis. And if you don't have producers that can make their own food, you can't have the chain above that energy flow. And we've talked about carbon dioxide and nitrogen and a little bit about oxygen in the atmosphere and how important those are to life. And none of, things that the flow of matter and the flow of energy if you don't have these vital things for organisms to have to survive. Here is just a little slide reminding you of the water cycle. This is something we recently just studied, and so this should be fairly easy to review. We also have a slide on the carbon as well as the oxygen cycle, kind of showing you how oxygen and carbon move from the ground to the atmosphere and then back again. And then we also have the nitrogen cycle, which is showing you how nitrogen gets from the air to the ground, back to living things, back to the ground, back to the air, etc. I'm going to let you kind of flip through these two slides about explanations of the carbon and oxygen cycle if you need to review these. But I think really you probably have a good gist of it, but it wouldn't hurt to review. Respiration is similar to photosynthesis because you have to use glucose, which is this right here, and you have to use oxygen gas, and then we're gonna be releasing carbon dioxide as well as water as well as energy. So you also would need some form of energy for this to take place. And I know you can't see that really well, but for whatever reason, energy was left out there, and it should be included. All right. One thing I just want to talk about briefly, and we talked about this the other day, is that don't forget that we have such an impact on the ecosystems, the biomes, and the biosphere of life. And that whatever we can do to not only help our little area of land that we live on, but also knowing that that now flows to the ocean and affects other ecosystems and biomes that surround the world. We can play our little small part in helping to conserve both energy, but to make sure that the matter that we dispose of is done in a responsible manner, because as we know, it's conserved, it's not going to just dissipate from Earth. As we think about our responsibilities on Earth to maintain it, I just thought this chart was kind of interesting. It is a little dated. It's the population growth in the United States for 2000 to 2010. So obviously, with more and more people living here, pollution can happen even more because of our lifestyles. So just keep that kind of in the back of your minds. All right, so I just want to let you know this is where we are going to stop, and this is